Hello, this is Paul Janowski, and this is Hacktivism versus Terrorism. A strategic plan of any combat operation includes a classification of an enemy's goals, their techniques, what exactly do they do to do their work, the assets that they have, and their causes. Since September 11th, we as a society have tried to combat terrorism headlong. Policies that were not in place prior to the attacks were in fact created soon afterwards, with emphasis toward the ever-growing world of information technology. With a better collection of tools to combat the terrorism, the goal now can include tools to aim at cyber technology. With a collection of tools to combat terrorism, the goal can now include that. And with a good number of specific attacks of some sort could actually be on the web, there's a question that comes to mind. What if one of these new tools include combating terrorism with hacktivism? What if a computer hacker groups could interrupt the terrorists' organization's ability to carry out specific terror plots or to communicate to their operatives worldwide? The purpose of this paper is to show that hacktivist groups can fight terrorists by employing their skills to combat the global threat of terrorism. Cyber terrorism and hacktivism. The division between cyber terrorism and hacking. Both are considered criminal activities. Hacking online into business computers, into banks, into businesses are considered financial crimes, high-tech financial crimes, where cyber terrorism is completely different. It has a cyber crime element to it, but there's more to it. They both have different modus operandi, or modes of operation. What is cyber terrorism? Cyber terrorism, by definition, is the politically motivated use of computers and information technology to cause severe disruption or widespread fear in society, resulting of physical damages or casualties. In other words, there needs to be a terrorist component to be considered cyber terrorism. It means essentially that a hacking group or a group online breaks into a government building computer, or as you'll see down the road in this report about breaking into CIA computers. Although no damages or casualties had been caused by this, no actual death or destruction, this is not considered a cyber terrorist attack. It would be a cyber crime, but more so a hacking. It's not an easy term to define, as you can tell. Discussion of the cyber terrorism definition is dominated in the media. Their emphasis is strictly on ratings and or circulation numbers, rather than forming good working definitions. In other words, they're worried about getting the people to watch their show and their spin on stories and what's happening. It's a good tool that's been used in the media for years, especially with instant news happening anywhere, anytime. Being able to get it on a smartphone or on your computer or even at home. The word is exposed to long-lasting misuse and abuse since September 11th, 2001. Everyone seems to have been connecting the events of 2001 as cyber terrorists. Cyber terrorism was not, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm looking at it, cyber terrorism was not used in those attacks per se. The terrorist acts were carried out in its conventional mode, but not through internet technology or information technology. But they can use them on a very minimalistic level to commit more traditional activities, such as the planning of an attack. It could also gather intelligence before the attack. the logistical capabilities of what needs to be carried out. How are they going to do this, and what do they need to go as far as going through security at an airport or getting through to a basketball game at the Bradley Center? How difficult would it be to get in? And then how is it financed? Terrorist groups need payrolls. They need money coming in order to carry out these attacks. Now we have what's known as hacktivism. This is different from cyber terrorism. Hacktivism is a breakdown of two words from hack and activism. And the definition is an act of hacking or breaking into a website or computer system in order to voice a politically or socially motivated message. It's basically a politically inspired skill hack, meaning they're going into a particular website and with their skills hacking in just to show that it can be done, that nothing is 100% secure. It's essentially a constructive form of rebellious civil uprising. It means that this is a way for people to get their message across in a virtual sense, instead of filling up a room by protesters sitting in a room, not letting people going to work. You're doing it electronically. Hacktivists might create new tools, meaning the software that they're using now might be quicker, better, maybe even more widespread as far as their uses. Could be very simple things you could find online, or they use a variety of software tools already available out there. Their main weapon of choice, however, is something that's known as a distributed denial of service attack, or DDoS. What is a DDoS? Well, a DDoS is basically an attack that blasts the target server with thousands of page requests. When this happens, it overworks and crashes the site. Hacktivist actions. Who are these hacktivists? There exist two main groups. One is called Anonymous, and the other is known as LulzSec. LulzSec is a breakdown of the word Lulz Security. Their claim to fame was known for taking down the CIA website, just to show that it can be done. In Anonymous, the participants never reveal their identity, meaning they are anonymous. They're known as Anons. There's also unclear if there is a group of the leader, a group leader within this organization, or if it's just a bunch of people working with the same kind of goal and they're one for one. It's thought of as a combined character. You may have seen a picture or a mask that's known as the Guy Fawkes mask that's associated with these hacker groups. It is used with LulzSec and Anonymous, and it's synonymous with these groups to show that they are anonymous. LulzSec split from the Anonymous group, and the reason they split from Anonymous was because LulzSec was different in Anonymous's backing. Anonymous didn't do anything with finances in mind. LulzSec needs payrolls just as well. Their way of working requires people to actually get in places, physically get into places, to look at things, to get through things, to figure out if in fact they will be able to do it. They need payrolls, just like a terrorist group. However, they're far from a terrorist group. Hacking, leaking information, taking down websites to bring attention to causes is their main goal. You'll be interested to know that LulzSec was involved with taking information with WikiLeaks. That's one big thing that is with these hacker groups, is that they attack certain elements of the government, not stating that they are going to take the government down physically, but electronically and technologically they can. They have proved this, and it is effective. but it's more of an annoyance than anything else. And this is where the difference between cyber terrorism and hacktivism is that there is no communicated or actual physical damage or loss of life with the actions. This is Guy Fawkes. This is the mask that I was explaining to you before. This is synonymous with Anonymous and with LulzSec, as well as other groups. Anonymous grabbed media attention in 2008 when they hacked into the Church of Scientology website. A video was posted on their site that basically showed how the Church of Scientology really worked in their eyes. That it was not a church of helping, it was more a church of stealing, and that it was not very well taken by people. The exposition of this group really started to show that Anonymous and any other groups could do this. Their message was defenders of truth, seekers of knowledge, digital avengers who cannot be lied to, or emails will be hijacked. Essentially what they're doing is they're threatening people by exposing them with emails, messages, texts, you name it. It can be done. It is an action that is questioned by people of ethically and morally right, and that will be talked about a little bit later on. In 2014, in August of 2014, a Twitter account associated with Anonymous acknowledged, quote, a full-scale cyber war against ISIS, and the message said, welcome to Operation ISIS, where Anonymous will do its part in combating ISIS's influence in social media and shut them down. This actual message posed the question, can hackers, or as they're being known as crusaders, actually help in the war on terror? Well, they can, but yes, it can, but to what extent is another issue. Anonymous could delay terrorist groups from relaying their message and their rhetoric to the public. It is yet to be seen that any action by groups such as Anonymous or LulzSec could completely halt a terrorist group from carrying out a mission, in full or in part, to a foregone conclusion. In other words, they don't have firearms or tanks or planes to battle the terrorist groups, where they do. Their weapon is the information technology, the cyberspace. Delaying messages to terrorist splinter groups or operatives in the field is a prime example of what can be done. This has proved to be somewhat effective as well. And what will be shown in a little bit, what has happened since some of these attacks have happened, what actually occurred after the hackings. Another group that is mentioned in here and was not a major group until recently is known as Controlling Section, or CTRL-SEC. CTRL-SEC, or Control-SEC, is a group that hacked into ISIS Twitter accounts right after the November 2015 terrorist attacks on Paris, France. Threatening ISIS with a hack, they hacked into their Twitter accounts, and they exposed sites that provided financial backing to ISIS as well as other accounts or other groups with these accounts. Essentially what happened is Twitter has a policy that you cannot display anything of hateful nature or violence or promote violence, hate, anti-Semitism, whatever it is. They cannot do that. If it is brought to their attention and they see that, the accounts are shut down. What has happened is Control-SEC will go with their operatives in clandestine ways and actually go and hack into these accounts, 500 accounts a day, and find these questionable accounts and follow them. When they find something that seems weird or unusual, they will send that list to another operative, which will then make an announcement to Twitter that we have this. You're talking anywhere between 50 to 2,000 accounts are accounts that are tied to one Twitter account. So there's 2,000 members that have potential access to this. They have now been shut down. And the theory is that ISIS accounts being hacked will slow down the way that they had planned to get recruits, to get the messages out. Because once those accounts are shut down, the chances of these people remembering every single contact is slim and none. So it buys time, if anything else. Another thing with the financial backings that was found, they were brought to the Homeland Security and FBI's attention, where they went after them on a different level. The question I had is this action considered cyber terrorism? Well, given what I've explained already, the answer is no, it is not. The reason is the actions taken by ControlSec actually thwarted potential terrorist attack. There was no violent attack included with it by ControlSec. So again, it is not cyber terrorism, but hacktivism. Government recognition of terrorist threats. Power grids, water treatment plants, and public safety communications have been known as hard targets, beneficial hard targets for cyber terrorists. Prior to the events of 9/11, law enforcement had little hesitation about infrastructure security. Now, it seems that power grids are prime targets for cyber warfare to be actually declared. Critical infrastructure is a known target. The internet is used to access these. Now you have to understand, in these buildings, there are ways of remotely logging in to the computer networks. Power grids, water treatment plants, public safety communications, all use the internet somehow. They use DSL lines, digital radio systems to communicate, Wi-Fi access, and telephone modems are used. This is used pretty much in all three of these situations. But infrastructure has been noted as being a prime target. Terrorists' own hacking network. The terrorists have been long interested in getting into the hacking networks themselves. It is known that terrorist groups have gone about the internet targeting supporters with their rhetoric, their merchandise, and other means. The ease of utilization of the internet is beginning to find its way into the networks as time goes on. It is within, I believe, in 20 years or so, the terrorist networks technologically could be caught up with the ever-changing everyday network knowledge to be on par with everyday people such as myself or anyone else in the class who is looking at being in an IT or information systems technology career. The use of the modern terrorists is well related to the conceptualization, of terrorism as psychological warfare. Basically, the internet is used to spread their rhetoric, but it also permits terror groups to intensify the consequences of their activities with follow-up messages, meaning that once this is done, they can send another message and send more fear by sending response messages to them. But one of their things they've been using, and it's not that real new, it's been around for a while, it's called steganography. And what steganography is it's the concealing of messages in graphic files. You may have seen them on TV shows like NCIS or things of that nature, where a graphic file, a GIF file or a JPEG, will have what looks like a picture of a flower, but within it they can break down into the structure of the file and find encrypted messages. This is used quite often, and it's just one method of the groups on communicating to other groups to send coded messages. Advantages for the terrorist groups. Terrorist attacks could be performed remotely, meaning a terrorist attack doesn't have to physically have terrorists within an airplane to be taken down like they did on September 11th. Airplanes could be remotely taken over from the other side of the globe without a terrorist dying. Another thing is water treatment plants could have someone on the inside and introduce a chemical agent that could be released remotely at a later time. These are scenarios that are constantly used in the public safety, communications, and infrastructure businesses, which I will explain in a little bit. This is a breakdown of what a digital radio system looks like. As you've heard in my reports, I am an employee of the City of Milwaukee Police Department's Communications Division. So I have personal knowledge on this system, and I'd like to introduce a little bit more as far as what we are concerned about with digital radio communication system. This is something that's known as Open Sky. Open Sky is a communications mode that's used by the company Harris. It consists of dispatch consoles, which goes to an interface into a server, and the controller at another location is here, goes onto the local access network. Routers send it to all the sites over here. The network management system is the system I work on every day, maintaining the system. And the connection of the RF, or radio frequency, on the radio towers comes to the link access server, and all the control signals come through here, the router, the controller, and the voice access server. Out here, the digital radios would be picked up by the antennas. We found that the cyber attack can target one or more of these dedicated IT systems. They can steal the data, they can disrupt or damage data, they can deny access to data or computers, spread disinformation, or shut down control systems completely. This is very, very important because this is just a network with a dedicated IP address that's allocated. There are firewalls all over the place, but I don't believe that any system is 100% safe. I believe that there's always something that can allow someone to get in. So we have to be on the defensive. The goal of an attack like this on infrastructure, or at least on a communication system, is to make the city go deaf. I found out when I started working at the Milwaukee Police Department in 2003 that in the event of another 9/11 attack, the communications system, which is housed at my location, is essentially ground zero. If a well-coordinated attack could be carried out, they would go for the command and control, the radio system, the communication system. If they go deaf, then half the battle is lost to us, because they now have control over how you're going to defeat fires or rescue calls or try to get anybody in there. It basically renders the public safety agencies useless, meaning it's no good. It's just a hunk of electronic gear that's just wasting battery power. It can be compromised externally by somebody on the outside, or internally by an employee. An employee who knows what they're doing could easily go and change something. And that's something that we always have to maintain 110% knowledge of what's going on. I mentioned a term called disinformation. Disinformation is the false information that is given to people in order to make them believe something or to hide the truth. In other words, what one scenario that was brought up during an exercise was that a police call came over sending officers to a report of shots fired in another area of the city. There's two ways of thinking about this. Is this disinformation by basically sending officers into an ambush, or are they pulling them away from an area that is going to be attacked? So it is very easy to go in and to go and create havoc this way. It's a scenario we train for quite a bit, and it is very scary when you think about it. It can completely and realistically it can happen, and it's something we have to train for every day. How could hacktivist groups help in the war on terror? This question was asked earlier on, and I believe that just their mere existence of being there is something that can help. When someone hears something about a terrorist group, their thought is, oh man, oh geez, terrorists are out there. But if the terrorists hear that Control Sec, LulzSec, Anonymous is going to hack us, Most of the time, these terror groups are speaking bigger than they really are. A lot of them may be splinter cells trying to copycat other groups. And the thought that they're going to get hacked would just thwart it completely. Is this an ethically correct thing that we are doing, that hacktivists are doing? That comes down to a foggy kind of definition. Is it ethical to hack into a computer network, cause mayhem to a known enemy, and be completely legal? Well, since 9/11, our view on the world has changed forever. A hacktivist's goal is not to cause destruction, but to just to get a message across to the public. In the case of terrorists, a hacker's goal would be to disrupt the communique with the groups involved in a potential plot or recruitment messaging. But here's what we can do. I believe that a governmental entity that could combine the clandestine activities associated with these groups to work side by side to combat the cyber terror threat that is very much real. This is the problem and a hurdle that needs to be looked at, because there needs to be specific guidelines that would be in place for legalities. First, you have to understand these groups are very, very paranoid of the government. They don't believe in the government protecting them. They believe in themselves exposing what the government is about, and that the government doesn't really care. So specific guidelines would have to be put in place that would be followed. We have memorandums of understanding, or MOUs, that are handed out to other departments that understand that, okay, you can get on our system and you can do these things, but you can only use it in scenario A, B, C, or D. This would have to be laid out for these groups. But the trust in the government's backing in these groups would be a difficult hurdle to clear, and this is one thing that is a very troubling notion, because these government backing beliefs, do you believe the government's going to work with a group like this? Or do you even think these groups would want to try it? I don't think they would at first. However, there needs to be some dialogue there. To be ahead of the enemy, we need to be proactive. And I believe something like this is a proactive move. Since 2001, things have changed. This world is a different place. And I believe that using government backing with groups like this to perform these activities may help in the thwarting of these terror plots, and we could be ahead of the game. I believe it is very doable, and I think it'd have to be, like I said before, some dialogue in order to get this to work. So in conclusion, hacktivists have the ability to work in a counterterrorism capacity that the government could potentially utilize by recruiting them as part of an electronic surveillance unit of some sort, with a goal of disrupting terrorist movements and actions. While this seems simplistic in nature, there are many intricacies that would need to be addressed as to what tactics could be used, what laws they would be bound by, and if they would want to be involved altogether. For the federal government not to consider the possibility of utilizing the expertise of these groups, I believe would be an overstatement of their potential to control the ever-growing threat of cyber attacks from multiple simultaneous locations around the globe.